asked about what your guys' opinions were on Let's Plays and streaming and things like that. From the sounds of it, you're very pro.
Yeah, very. Like we're going to work directly with Twitch to help try and get some straight integration into the game for Twitch. But even you look at our policy for the alpha, there's no NDA. So if you want to stream or take video of how awful and buggy it is to begin with, although I think it looks pretty good, but go ahead. Like there is no wall between us and the Hex community. That's the point. Yeah. And like we've had lots of people, like when the Kickstarter was going on, we had multiple people who found out we were in Irvine who would just show up on our Wednesday night game night, and like just random people were, I'm thinking about putting $50 in, and, and they come over and eat pizza and have drinks and play games with us all night. And be like, oh, okay, I think I'll do it. It's like it's just a total open access, and that's how I want it to be for the game proper. Even if it blows up and it's just the biggest thing in the world. For me, the real win is if we can remain a small team and remain incredibly connected to the fans, because that's what this is really all about. I feel like our alpha being completely open to people for streaming and videos and everything else is definitely an indication of how we're going to treat things in the future.
Well, and the fact that you're taking time, I mean, like, to have this interview even with me too, it says a lot, right? So a lot of people, even when I've been telling people about this possible interview, and then I was like, well, I think they might give me some PR lady, and like I really want to get Cory. And then so when it came through that you were going to do the interview, I think everyone was really impressed, and it shows you like you stand behind your game, and you're not. They
shouldn't be. I've said yes to everyone. I don't think I've turned down. Not to say you're not special. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I don't think I've turned down one person yet. Like I helped some kids sell lemonade the other day because they asked me to. I mean, I have yet to turn down the chance to talk about the game. I don't care how big or small. Although you actually have a pretty big audience, so. This is a huge win for me. I'm not talking to 10 guys. Although, and that's the funny thing, like at Gen Con, I was walking around talking to different people, and somebody would drag their friend over and be like, hey, my friend's thinking about the game. He saw I kind of likes it. What do you sell him? And then I spent a half an hour like passionately pitching this game, and I pitched it so many times. But I mean, literally, I will go individual to individual and pitch this game. So. Let's see. I just have to pitch it about 100,000 times. I've probably got about 18,000 already. So I've got about 82,000 more people to individually convince to play this game, and then we're gonna have a dynamite community.
Yeah, then you really have something.
I got something. Right? 100,000 people.
Well, hopefully my channel, the Hex channel here, will help grow that a little bit. So. Some of the questions I got from the early subscribers on the Hex channel, some are a little more vanilla, some are more interesting, but I'm sure you get asked this one a lot. But what made you choose the name Hex? What were you inspired? Is it just, I know most names, like people think Pink Floyd have this great name history around their band, and I think they just bought their name from a band name auction or something like that. But how did you come up with Hex, and were there any other names in contention?
Yes, there was. It was actually, oddly, Vex, V-E-X, because when I originally had it, I had like the idea of vexing, like the stones were these, like the gems show up on the planet, because the original concept, it came to me as I was thinking about trying to create a high fantasy world, and I thought about, like, I didn't want to do the same thing that had been done over and over again in terms of some of the high concept stuff, although some of the high fantasy races would need to be the same because that's sort of kit. And I think people kind of expect that and makes them comfortable. But I was thinking about humans and about how humans are made up of their environment. And then I thought, wow, that's interesting. There are different magical beings in universes, and what about the environment dictates something as being magical or not, or having these properties. And then I thought about this idea that there was a low magic world with this high magic element brought to it, this meteor with all these gems, and then how I thought the humans could become these very magical people because they absorb things in their environment and eventually take on characteristics. So they could be the only ones using magic. And then that kind of is like, no, that's not quite right. And then I had this idea, and this is something that we have. There's a character, like I haven't gotten to this yet, but I hate to spoil stuff, but one of the things, like there's going to be a person who is born, and in the womb there is actually a gem, an onyx, and he's born and he's telepathically linked to this gem, and the gem is actually his twin, but it's like this dark side of him. And so there's this, all of a sudden the humans start to develop this weird connection to the gems because they've been part of the environment for so long. And so this was where all the thinking was. And then M is vexing because they're like, something is vexing. It was vexing to everyone that these gems were there. And then I was looking at the vex word, and then it dawned on me the idea of like the name. And then I was thinking vex for the name. I'm like, that doesn't quite right because it's not so much about, I don't know, it just sort of wasn't right. And then I was like, Hex. And I thought, man, Hex is a great title. It says spells and magic right away, and it's 3 letters, and I love the word Hex. Just everything about it I was in love with, and I was like, but there's no way I can get that name. Like, how could that possibly be available? And then I went and I did all the work and did all the searching and actually was able to trademark it in the right categories. And it was available.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, there had been other stuff a long time ago that had never trademarked itself from like the 80s, like some board games, or they had other names with it. And so, but it was trademarkable just insanely enough. Like, I've been lucky like that. I've named a lot of games in my life. Like back when I was, Virgin and Midway, I would name a lot of games. Like I named this game called Thrill Kill, which I was very proud of that. And I actually trademarked Sword and Sorcery. I couldn't believe at the time. I mean, this was in the 90s. Nobody had trademarked the word sword and sorcery, and so I was able to get that. And the game never came out, but I think EA still owns that trademark because they bought Virgin. But anyway, I was in shock that I could get Hex.
Yeah.
And so it was just the most perfect, and now I love it. The logo is amazing. Everything about it, I mean, I'm very art and design centric, and everything about it I love so much. I could not be happier. We had talked about other names at one point because we couldn't get every category. We could get the ones we wanted, but not, like, I don't think we got toys. But I was like, you know what? I do not care. Like, I can't imagine this game being called anything else, although it's had a bunch of other code names, all of which secretly appear in the game at some point or another.
So we'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Right. But that's where the name Hex came from.
That's pretty awesome. So with and this goes with the question maybe a little earlier, but so with the TCG scene divided and established for so long, right? So you have like guys like me who are like, Magic is the best and Yu-Gi-Oh's for snot-nosed kids, or they think the same, or everybody's kind of in their camps. How do you plan on competing with the current TCG market, or even things like Hearthstone, which hit market maybe a little earlier? It came out maybe a few months ago.
Right.
How do you get in there and compete with those guys?
From minute one, there's a couple answers to that question. The crazy thing is, no one is doing what we're doing, and that's the part that's most mind-boggling. Like I've mentioned many times, I know what I want to play as a consumer. I used to be a hardcore Magic player. I clearly, I have a company that makes the WOW TCG. When it comes to digital card games, the definition of a TCG, as I've said a bunch of times, is that you have pass priority. If you don't have pass priority, you're a card game, not a TCG. I want to play a TCG. I want to play a TCG online. The options I have now weren't really speaking to me. There were a lot of things that I felt were missing. And so the invention of Hex, all of its features, all of the great innovation was really about offering me the game that I want to play. And so I don't feel like we're really competing in some ways. I feel like we are trailblazing.
Sure.
And when you say MMO TCG and people get the chance to jump in and do everything they've ever wanted to do in a TCG, but then also be in a guild and join a team and run a tournament at 11:30 at night in their underwear and have a digital collection that changes and have sandbox gameplay where they can socket cards and play against the computer and do a 3-man raid and have a keep that they set up, keep defense, 3-deck keep defense strategy puzzles. No one's doing this. There is no, like, the question's going to be, how are people going to compete with me? Like, they're not going to be able to compete with this. They're not, because they're just not this game. And I think that, the goal for me has been from day one, put out the greatest game possible, have it be super successful, pour all the money back into it in esports and also in making the game just better, and get such a lead on everyone else that no one can ever compete with us. Well, and so I'm not really worried about competing with those other games because they are really kind of no competition.
Yeah, for me, like, if I may ask this for a moment here, Like there's been a lot of pressure even from a lot of people on my stream and stuff where like, they say, you know, are you going to try Scrolls? Are you going to try Hearthstone? And those games don't really appeal to me because they're not different enough from what I already have. And where Hex comes in, it's like I'm a casual like RPG guy. Like every new Final Fantasy game, I go out and buy it, and I get like 80% of the way through it, and it just sits on the shelf, and then I buy the next one when it comes out, just because I love that whole genre. And to me, and I played World of Warcraft on and off, like as a casual, try-hard kind of player, and so to me, this really does combine everything, and so I'm extremely excited for it, and I can definitely see what you're saying, where they're not really in the same league. You guys are way ahead.
No, that was part of it. I would back in the day when I was trying to find publishers for Kickstarter, and I would tell people like I think there was one GDC game design conference like where. There was one GDC where all the people told me everyone's pitching a trading card game. Everyone knows that selling things in packs and blind reveal and all that is the way to go because of the monetization, blah blah blah. And I was like, really? Everyone is making a TCG. Where are they getting all these TCG designers? Like, how do they think that they can just come into this incredibly robust community and just put out whatever because they want to sell packs? And then I thought, well, maybe that's the case. Maybe there's, a bunch of people. But I'll tell you this. Our plan from day one was to innovate and reinvent what a digital TCG could be. And that's why it's an MMO TCG, because the community thing is so important. And I knew, when I tell them, I go, that's fine. But when we announce and people see what we're doing, everyone else is going to have to stop, look at what they're making, and reanalyze whether or not they think they can even launch it and have any chance of success against what we've done. Because it is so much bigger and so much more. It's so robust that I would be those other companies. I'd be like, no. How do we do this? Yeah. We're going to be a worse version of what they're doing on the TCG level because none of them are TCG people first, and then we also are missing this entire other game. So I honestly, I don't feel like we have a ton of competition.
Yeah, it's you'll be kind of in that potentially. You're in that space, you're so far ahead, then how do you keep pushing yourself once you're there? Once you launch, let's say, everything's out, everything's working perfect, you've got 100,001 subscribers, and so what makes Cory come to work then the next day?
Well, no. So I've made it clear to all the people that have been following stuff. I have a giant laundry list of features that we want to put in the game. Like I had to cut to get to an MVP that could be reasonably timed for a beta and then a final launch. Even now, like people look at how many dungeons I promised because of the Kickstarter and all this other stuff, like a couple 100 hours worth of content. It's crazy how much is in the game. But that said, I have so many more things I want to. I've talked about some of them. Like the idea we have raids, right? Where you have 3 players play against a raid boss. And the raid boss is the computer, and it's got this crazy multi-stage deck, and you guys have to work together to make your decks work together, and it's this crazy puzzle, and it's fun. And I've said, well, what about this idea, where somebody can be a player and be the raid boss? And then, so I'm playing as this Lich Lord, and I'm ranked as this specific raid boss, and my ranking dictates how good my loot table is. And then eventually I can charge people to run this raid against them, and they pay me to play against them. And if I lose, their loot is great because I'm this super high-ranked guy. But if they win, that's if they win, so they get this great loot. If they lose, my ranking continues to go up, and I become more and more desirable as a raid boss a character. Like that kind of stuff. And I have so many ideas of things we can do that no one's ever thought of.
So how
and
much?
That's the thing that keeps me coming to work.
So how do you keep your developers from smothering you with a pillow at night?
Yeah, that's actually a much better question. It's not really the developers; it's more the engineers.
Oh, okay.
Like my lead engineer, Chris Woods. Like he's a super genius, and he's the first one to point out how stupid most of my ideas are, which I appreciate. And then the challenge is how do we make them into good ideas? So far, everyone's totally on board. I'm very lucky to have a very talented team. We continue to grow. We've got some real stars on the team. like just I mean, from Ben, you've seen some of these people like Ben Stoll's talked at length about design. He's amazing. Dan Clark's doing the development, and he's amazing. You look at like people who don't get a lot of credit, like my lead graphic designer Larry Renack is just the greatest graphic designer I've worked with in 20 years, and I've worked with hundreds of them. And people think like, well, whatever, graphic design. You know what? For a TCG and a video game, making sure that menus and interface and icons and logos and everything looks beautiful is so important, and that they're all legible and it all works.
I'm 100% with you on that, man. Just all you need to do is look at the Moto online to see what not to do.
For design, especially graphic design, and Larry is just the greatest. And so I have these crazy all-stars working with me, so it's been real easy. And everyone shares the vision. That's an important piece of this, that everyone shares the vision of what this can be. If we are going to be as big as, as WoW or as League of Legends, and I'm not to say that we will. That's my dream, but
it can be done.
Even if we're a baby version of those, a tiny fraction, we would still be this enormous thing, and we would be able to have what we've always dreamed about, which is the ability to support this community and make the greatest game ever. That's the big thing for me. I want it to be successful because I want to pour it back into esports. I want to walk into an arena where we're doing Hex, the Hex event, and have people excited and people in those little soundproof booths playing with a giant screen in the middle with the shoutcasters, and we can see everyone's cards. They're talking about what plays could be happening. That hasn't existed yet, and that it hasn't, especially with games out there as big as they are, just blows my mind. Like, it's just, it needs to happen. It needs to happen, and so we're going to make it happen. And beyond that, being able to pour all the money back into new features for the game so that I can continue to play the game that I want to play, which has a lot more going on than even we have now, and have the most beautiful art in the world, and be able to hire the best fantasy artists in the world. That's what keeps us all going. That's why people don't kill me while I sleep, because they all believe that we could have this.
Well, speaking of art, how is Hex and like the whole mythology drawn from classic mythology, or has it been just a complete brainchild from beginning to end, or?
Yeah, the basic world. The basic world concept, including all the races and stuff, I created all that myself, and then I brought in Michael Kirchhoff, a very, very talented writer, to help me continue that, to keep building things, to add texture and flavor and characters, and he has done so much work to really flesh out again my usual terrible ideas into something amazing. And so. He actually, like our rabbit race, I originally was calling them the Rabbiton, which is terrible. And he changed the name to the Shin Hair. And the Shin Hair is so good.
Oh, it's so much better.
I love it. So when I have talented people making me look better and making the game look better, it's just there's no joy greater. I might still work in a lost tribe of the Rabbiton that are the good rabbits, but more spoilers.
Yeah, I'll have to keep my eye open for that now.
So... The world does borrow, clearly. We have like Titania and Oberon. There's a lot of stuff that I wanted to pull in that were from old fairy tales, or stuff that you've seen that had a little bit of a known quantity to it, because I think it gave it some nice texture. We've been toying around with some of the Cthulhu mythos stuff. I mean, we have this whole story about the Void and the Void Society, and they're fighting a giant battle against these elder gods. We've been toying around with potentially just using that stuff. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting, like, when do you bring in stuff that has existed into your completely original high fantasy IP? Clearly stuff that's all public domain, nothing that's owned by anyone. But when do you bring in old cultural stuff into it to give it this neat flavor? And when do you need to just be making stuff up on your own? It's always a balancing act. But I feel like if it does the job of really making the flavor work and making the overall vision pop, that it's good. That I think it's great.
Cool. So in the future, when decks get more advanced, do you expect decks to stick to like one race and synergy, like we see with other TCGs? And for example, in Magic, there's like humans, and as those expand, or do you think there'll be a mix of races with just good cards, or? I think that this is the part where we shine brightest, is that the obvious paths to victory
are in some ways there. There's lots of synergistic gameplay between the Shin Hares or the robots and the dwarves or the humans all having Inspire with each other. There's definitely the race matters because we kept that in mind, or Ben kept that in mind when designing. But all of the crossover synergies, all of the hidden strategies. This first set's huge, and I think that when we come out, you're going to see a very, very wild meta for a while as people really discover just how interesting. Like lots of people said, the Orc Burn deck, the Red Rush is unstoppable, and I'm like, really? Because I just watched the Shin Hare deck pop out 14 Shin Hares and give them all like +2/+2 and smoke someone.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, then it's like, oh, but then you have sort of this. You have a burn life to draw card style, all blood deck that's incredibly potent. We've got a lot of potent strategies, and how they rock paper scissor each other is not totally set. And so that's why I'm most excited to see how the meta evolves. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to be very narrow. That's for one thing. I don't think this game is going to be narrow on the meta. It's been sort of a directive from minute one, because we design also around draft. I've said this many times. Most companies wouldn't know draft. Like a lot of the, companies making card games,
sure,
wouldn't know draft to start with. And if they did, they wouldn't know how to design around it. How you design the set from card 1 to the final card, if you don't have draft in mind from the absolute very beginning of your design process, it is going to be a disaster for draft. It just is.
Well, and that's so. I was going to say limited.
That and making sure that we design for draft from minute one is a big part of what we're doing.
And draft for me is like my favorite, style of play. Limited, like sealed and draft. I've been playing a lot of like draft simulators. You probably know this, but there's already draft simulators going around for your game. So I go out there and I'm simulating drafts and I'm shooting web, like trying to figure out different strategies. It's very exciting because there seems to be a lot of different paths you can take, and that's really apparent in draft. It's not, sure, constructed always has a lot, but in draft, boy, you could. We
are designed for draft, and we know because everyone loves draft. Like I love draft. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times I would be sitting in a card shop playing Magic until 2 or 3 in the morning, knowing I had to get up at 7 the next day to go to work. And just be like, but I'm doing 2 draft pods tonight, and then we didn't start till 10, so it's like this is going late. And so and I'd be playing with all these like high end, famous Magic players. They're all part of this Southern California community, from Brian Hacker to Truck Bowie, John Yu, all these people that used to play with me, and we'd be drafting all night long. It was just what we did.
And now that'll be you on Hex,
Yeah, it could be on, but it could be online. It could be in my house.
That's right.
And then I also don't have to get up at 7 to come to work.
Yeah, and it'll be different when you're playing in your underwear at home versus in your local card shop.
Exactly.
They're not a big fan.
Because when I would play in my underwear at the local card shop, it was awkward, especially I'm 40 and you got a bunch of 17, 18 year olds there. Yeah. It's creepy when the old guy comes in his underwear. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't help that you drive that panel van either, but.
Yeah, right.
So, what are some dates now to kind of wrap it up here? What are some dates that now that we're all ravenous for Hex? What are some things that can keep us from jumping out the window?
Well, I'll say this: the big thing is, hopefully, again, knocking on wood, you'll hear it in the background. The 8th, next Tuesday, I believe it's next Tuesday or Wednesday. Is the alpha, and the alpha will give you the chance to make an account, have 4 of every card, or just about every card, or if not every card, then shortly every card. You'll be able to make decks, save decks, play against other people, have random matchups. You'll have AI built into it. This jank bot AI that Chris has put together that's not perfect yet. Like, we're still working on it, but give you a chance to play with AI so you can just deck test. Sure. All that stuff is going to be ready. That'll all be in. You'll start to get a look at how beautiful it is. Again, there'll still be a work in progress. There'll be tons of bugs, everything else, but you'll have a chance to play. And I think that'll keep people pretty happy for a while. The goal, is to continue to roll out features as quickly as possible. The first set of features, besides just continuing upgrading the UI and the looks of the game, is to try and get all the tournament stuff in as quickly as possible. And that'll mean draft, so then people will be able to do phantom drafts and just start playing drafts over and over and over as part of that alpha experience. And then from there, we have our giant MVP list, and we'll just keep adding more features until we finally get to the monetized beta, and that's when we wipe everything after enough testing. We'll do a little bit of beta testing with that sort of closed, just as what beta is, and then we'll wipe everything, and then you'll see the Kickstarter rewards hit, and we'll be this sort of, you'll be able to buy packs and play drafts and start to have all that stuff sort of come into it.
In a perfect world, does the calendar still say 2013 when you get to the beta, or are we into the 14s, do you think?
My hope is that it's still the 13, but at this point it's just too murky for me to make a guess. Like everyone is going to continue to. We've been crunching for a long while. We're going to continue to crunch all the way until the absolute final game is delivered, which is the step after that beta. So my hope is that it is, but I can't make it. I'm very hesitant to make promises at this point because I don't like letting people down, and I can't guarantee that that's the case. But I would love it if it was. We're working towards it.
Well, even though I'm eagerly anticipating, and I am at the I donated at the Kickstarter level where I will have alpha access, so I am fortunate to have that. But we've definitely seen. I'm definitely understanding of that. We've seen some releases this year that are like the definition of how to not launch. So
yeah.
I totally get err on the side of caution, and I want Hex to be a huge success too. And launch is a big deal. When it comes to that, just ask EA. So it's
No, believe me, I get it. There's a lot of risk for us. We're it's important for us to know what we don't know. And we're not a video game company in our DNA. A lot of people who work here are. A lot of people I brought in are. I mean, I am. But it was definitely a competency that we've had to stretch to pick up. And so I think there's still some hurdles for us, some unknowns for us, but we're doing the best we can. And, Cryptozoic's, sort of tagline is fans first. And we try to stay true to that, whether that's, how we're treating everyone in the community to what we eventually try and deliver. And I know what people want. They want this game to be great.
Yeah.
And it's always a juggle for me of how much greater can I make it at the expense of people being disappointed that it's a 1, 2, 3 a week, 4 days, a week later. It's really hard. It's really hard. It kills because I take it real serious. And so I look at an interface like the coin toss screen that is the beginning of the game, and I'm still working on design elements, and the graphics are still coming together. And I'm like, okay, would I hold this 2 more days to let them finish this? I want to because I'm a perfectionist, but is that right? I mean, it's just such a hard thing to be balanced. And I look at the comments, I do read all the forums. I read our forums. I read just about everything, and I get it. I do. I know we want this game out, and we want people playing as quickly as possible, more than anyone on the forums. I mean, honestly, I can say that. More than you. I want this to be played by you. Believe me. But it's always this balance of trying to figure out, do I cut a corner to save a day because then you can play it a day quicker? I don't know. It's always hard.
Well, and that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? I mean, that's why you're CEO. Guys like me just get to be blindly demanding, and we don't have to worry about that sort of stuff.
Right. Hey, and believe me, I know the arguments. You told us, you promised us, and we supported you, and we gave you money. And that's the interesting thing about Kickstarter is that it's not just fans that want a game. They have skin in the game. They actually put money in. You put money in. Mm-hmm. I owe you. I do. And so I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly at all. And if there's a delay, it's not because I don't take your commitment lightly. It's because I don't feel like what I have right now is ready for it's not going to live up to your expectations. And I'll tell you, the other part of that is, are we working hard enough? And I can promise you, everyone works long hours, and this is the total focus. And so I'm hoping we hit the 8th.
Yeah, me too. And I'm pretty sure you'll do it. I gotta, us beards, we gotta stick together. I feel like, a kinship here, and I know you're gonna hit it. I'm gonna be streaming live on Twitch on October 8th. You heard it here first. So thanks, Cory, for all your time. Thanks for sticking with me all this time. And
oh no,
I really appreciate it.
Like I said, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for for reaching out. Like I love the chance to talk about the game. It's my favorite thing.
All right, cool. Well, I'll let you get on to the rest of your evening, and I'll get editing this and be uploading it real soon.
All right, really great chatting with you.
All right, thanks, man.
All right.
Bye.